You stacked up here. Oh, okay.
Whenever you're ready.
All right. Today's dafim are yesterday's daf of Samech Aleph and today's daf of Samech Beis. We begin on the very last line, the very last few words of Samech Amud Beis. The words are V'chein Hayir Rab Shimon bar ben Yochai. So bottom of Samech Amud Beis. And the reason that this Gemara starts V'chein Hayir Rab Shimon ben Yochai, you may recall that in Friday's daf, up here in the middle of Samech Aleph Amud Beis, about 15 lines down, we had Tanya Reb Shimon ben Yochai Amir Gioros Pchusmi Bashal Shani. So we already had a teaching of Reb Shimon ben Yochai, and now we continue. Jack, we're on Samech Amud Beis.
Okay.
Last line.
The very last line, last 5 words. V'chein hayir Reb Shimon ben Yochai Omer. And Reb Shimon ben Yochai also said, top of Samech Aleph, Kivrei Ovdei Kochavim Eina Metamim Be'ohel, that the graves of non-Jews do not cause tumas ohel. So if there was a structure over this grave, somebody who walks into that structure does not become tamei. Shne'emar v'atein sonit son marisi adam atem. So from this pasuk we learn atem kruyin adam, that you, the Jewish people, you are referred to as adam, as man. Ve'ein ha'ovdei kochavim kruyin adam, and the non-Jews are not called adam. So what is the connection between this pasuk and Tuma? If you look at the second Rashi on the top line of the page, Adam, Atem Kruyim Adam, V'gami Tumas Ohel Ksiv, Adam Ki Yamus Ba'ohel. So there is a connection between this language of Adam by Tumas Ohel by Jews, and this language of Adam from this pasuk in Yechezkel, indicating that the Tumas Ohel by a mace only applies to the graves of Jews. Meisive, we have a kasha on this teaching. V'nefesh Adam Shisha Asar Elef. We learned by the war in Midian. Morning. We learned by the war in Midian. We're on Samech Aleph Amud Aleph. We started at the last few words. Yeah, no. V'chein hayir Shimon ben Yochai Omer. So we are now 4 lines down on Samech Aleph Amud Aleph. Meisive, we have a kasha on this teaching. The pasuk says by the war with Midian, V'nefesh Adam Shisha Asar Elef, and we see that by Nefesh Adam, that word Adam refers to in reference to the 16,000 Midianites who were killed. So we see that Goyim are called Adam. So why isn't it that there's Tumas Ohel by a Goy? Answers the Gemara Mishum Behema. The only reason the Torah said so was to distinguish the humans from the animals. Another kasha, this from Sefer Yonah, Asher Yesh Bahar B'Mishtem Esrei Ribo Adam. There were more than 120,000 people. Asher Lo Yada Ben Yamino Lismalo. They didn't know their right from their left. So we see once again a reference to the Assyrians being referred to as Adam. The end of that pasuk Uvehema Rabbah. Answers the Gemara similarly. The only reason they are referred to there is to distinguish them mishum behema, to distinguish them from animals. A third kasha, similarly, called this also by Midian, called horeg nefesh v'chol nogea bechalal tischato. See, anybody who kills a Midianite in this war, and anybody who touches their corpse, they're going to become tamei. So doesn't that prove that that Jewish people can become tamei from a non-Jewish corpse? Dilma answers the Gemara, Iktil Chad mi Yisrael. Maybe the concern is that a member of the Jewish army, the member of Klal Yisrael, would have died, and that in dealing with that mace, the Jew would be subject to Tumas Ohel. And the Rabbanan, who are Cholek on Reb Shimon ben Yochai and hold that an Oved Kochavim does have Tumas Ohel, Lo Nifka Mimenu Ish. They say that what that pasuk refers to is that the Jewish people never sinned. That the Jewish people never sinned. It does not refer to.
That's your jump line.
Rabbanan would just say they didn't lose anyone.
Rabbanan say that shows that none of the Jews died, therefore they have to be talking about.
Oh, excuse me. Yeah, I skipped the line. That's correct. Sorry. So let's do that again. Dilma iktul chad mi Yisrael. So his answer is so we say that pasuk refers to, well, maybe one of the Jews passed away, The Rabbanan lo nifkad mimenu ish, and Rabbanan teach us that pasuk is really talking about that the Jews never sinned. Reb Shimon ben Yochai lo nifkad mimenu ish. What does he use that for? Oh, excuse me, I've got it backwards again. Sorry. Rabbanan lo nifkad mimenu ish. So Rabbanan said that none of the Jews were killed, and therefore it must be referring to the Goyim. Reb Shimon ben Yochai omer lo nifkad mimenu ish la'avera. My apologies. Reb Shimon ben Yochai says that refers to Avera, and therefore we see that in keeping with his teaching that Ovdei Kochavim Eina Metame Be'ohel. Ravina gives a different interpretation. Ravina Amar Nehi Dematin Hu Kara Me'atmuye Be'ohel. He says maybe it's so that in the psukim that we just saw that there's no tumas ohel dichsiv adam kiyamus be'ohel, as we saw in that Rashi above. However, mimagum mimasim mimiatin Hu Kara, but there is still, if you were to deal touching the body of a goy or carrying, that there is still some level of tuma, though it is not tumas ohel. Okay, we are going to run through 3 mishnayos here. We are now at the first one, 10 lines down. Iris eso almana v'nismana lios kohen gadol. You have a kohen who did erisin with a widow, which is completely mutter. A regular Kohen is not allowed to marry a grusha or chalutza, but is allowed to marry an almana. But then he was appointed Kohen Gadol. What is he supposed to do? Yichnos. He should go ahead and he can continue to marry her. Umaisa b'Yehoshua ben Gamla. We have a Maisa with Yehoshua ben Gamla, who is not going to come out looking so great here. However, he is credited elsewhere in Shas with, anybody remember? Establishing Jewish education systems. Without Yehoshua ben Gamla, Torah would have been lost. So what happened with him? Kidesh as Marta bas Baitus. He was Mekadesh, this woman named Marta bas Baitus. Umineu Amelech lios Kohen Gadol. And the king appointed him to be Kohen Gadol. Ukansa. So the Mishnah is bringing this as a proof that somebody who is engaged to a Kohen who's engaged to a woman who was then appointed as Kohen Gadol may go through with the marriage. However, Shomeres Yavam shenaflo lifnei Kohen Hedyot. However, a Shomeres Yavam who falls to Yibum before a Kohen who is not a Kohen Gadol, v'nismana lios Kohen Gadol, and then he is elected to become Kohen Gadol, afal pisha asaba maimer, even though he was mekadesh her as part of the Yibum process, harezet lo yichnos. He is not allowed to marry her. Why? Because she's an almana. Okay, says the Gemara, Tana Rabbanan. Minayin shem iris es almana v'nismana lios Kohen Gadol sheyichnos. So why is this initial ruling of the Tanakama that he's allowed to marry her? Talmud Lomar Yikach Isha, because we see that kinyan that he made, that's a firm kinyan. It's a firm kinyan. So he's allowed to go ahead and fully marry her. I asks the Gemara, Ihachi Shomeres Yavam Nami. Well, then he also has at least some level of kinyan with a Shomeres Yavam, certainly if he did mimer, but even potentially with the Zika. Answers the Gemara, Isha v'lo Yavama. So he says, look, there's a difference between one's own wife and a woman who fell to him only because of Yibum, his brother's wife. So we allow the Kohen to be to marry his own Arusa, but not to continue with his Yavama if he is appointed Kohen Gadol. So now the Mishnah mentioned this, Ma'aseh Yehoshua ben Gamla. So Minehu in Nisman Alo. So the Gemara points out that Yanai Amelech, the king, appointed him Kohen Gadol, not his fellow Kohanim, and it would seem from this language of that he was not really fit to be Kohen Gadol. Why not? Rav Yosef Katir Kachazina Hacha. I see a connection here with something that really isn't so kosher. Damar Rav Asi. Tarkava de Dinari, Ailile Marta Bas Baitus Liane Malka. That Marta offered basically a bribe, a bucket of gold. Tarkava, I think, is a contraction of trey kava, to kav, whatever it is, some kind of a container full of money. And she gave him money, so that he would appoint Yehoshua ben Gamla as the Kohen Gadol. Okay, Mishnah. Kohen Gadol. What's that? Kohen Gadol shemeis echav. A Kohen Gadol whose brother passes away. A very simple Mishnah. A Kohen Gadol must do chalitza if his brother passes away without any children, and he's not allowed to do yibum. So says the Gemara, third wide line down, kapasik v'tani. And the Gemara was very, very clear, a very short declarative statement. Lo shnamina erisin, lo shnamina nesuin. It does not matter if the Kohen Gadol was, if the Kohen Gadol's brother was only married through erisin, or whether it was full nesuin. Now, bishlamina nesuin asay v'lo sa'asehu. With regards, if the Kohen Hagadol's brother was fully married, you have the asay of marrying of yibum, and the lo sa'aseh of not marrying an almana. Ve'ein aseh doche lo sa'aseh. And you have the asay of basula. So the asay of yibum is not doche. Sorry. Right. So the mitzvah asay of yibum cannot be doche the lo sa'aseh of not marrying an almana combined with the asay of the requirement to marry a basula. The einase dochelos asay ve'asay. Ella mina erisin. But what about erisin, where she's a psula? Yavo asay v'yidches los asay. Well, then why doesn't the asay of yibum push away the los asay of not marrying an almana? They cancel each other out, and they should go right ahead. Because Rabbi Yerishona ought to be a shnia. The Gemara says we don't allow him to do the first bia, which would be a bia shel mitzvah to effect the yibum. Because of the second bia, which is not a bia shel mitzvah, and it turns out it's a bia with an almana, because the almana never loses her status of an almana relative to the Kohen Gadol.
But she's not a geula. I mean, the issue of geula does not apply if he's already married when he becomes Kohen Gadol, right? You said,
But she's a yavama. She was already a geula from somebody else.
I understand that. So the
she wasn't
asay,
geula, right?
there was the lo taseh was that she's got to marry Basula. Which was the asay?
The asay, you have the asay of yibum.
Yeah.
You have the asay of a basula and the los asay of an almana. So the issue is she's still an almana no matter what. So that first bia is a bia shel mitzvah. Great, check. But then he's still married to an almana, which he's not allowed to be. Even if the marriage were to go through, he's not allowed to be. He's not allowed to marry.
She is the Basula part, but it's not really significant.
Correct. Okay. Final mishnah miyamud. Kohen hedyot lo yisa islandus. You have a Kohen hedyot, meaning a regular Kohen, is not allowed to marry an islandess. An islandess is a woman who is barren, unable to have children. Ela in Kain yesh lo isha uvanim. So according to the Tanakama, that a Kohen hedyot, unless he already had or has a wife and children, is not allowed to marry an islandess. Rabbi Yehuda Omer afal bisha yesh lo isha uvanim lo yisa islandess. Shehizona ha'amura b'Torah. Very strong language. Rabbi Yehuda says that even if this Kohen hedyot already has a wife and children, he's not allowed to marry an islandess, because an islandess, and there's a big machlokas later that we'll see today, 6 or 7 different opinions of what a zona refers to. But according to Rabbi Yehuda, an islandess is the zona referred to in the Torah.
Why specifically calling out Yisrael?
Yeah.
Because we're not choshesh for the status of a zona by a non-Kohen. The Gemara will say that explicitly on one of the Amar Aleph that we'll get to. The Chachamim Omrim, Ein Zona El Gioros U'Mishuchreres. The Chachamim argue on Rabbi Yehuda, say no. The Zona only refers to a Giora and a Mishuchreres, and if you look in Rashi, the second 4 lines up, El Gioros Mishuchreres, to be as Akum ve'Eved Psala, because Bia with a non-Jew or Bia with an Eved, that puzzles her. V'Shenivela be'ilas is news, and a woman who had Bia with anybody who is usher to her. Okay, we are on Samech Aleph, for those just joining. Samech Aleph Amud Aleph, at the very bottom of the Amud, the Gemara. Amarle Reish Gelusa the Rav Huna. The exilarch said to Rav Huna, my time, what is the reason that a Kohen hedyot is not allowed to marry an islandess? And he answers, Mishum Pirya Verivya. He said, well, because you have to have children. Pirya Verivya, Kohanim Mudu Mefakte, V'Yisrael Lo Mefakte. Well, what are you talking about? Non-Kohen Jews have to have children too. So why are we picking on the Kohen? Why is the Tanakhama picking on the Kohen? Amarle mishum de kabayla misni seifa. The reason, so for in Achanami, a non-Kohen is also not allowed to marry an islandess. But the reason that the Mishnah cites a Kohen specifically is because of the statement of Rabbi Yehuda, who said, "Afa bisha yesh lo isha v'yesh." Top of Samech Aleph from the base. the Yeshlo Banim, that according to Rabbi Yehuda, as we said, even if he's already had a wife and children, Lo Yisa Islandish, Zona Hamur B'Torah, he's not allowed to marry an islandist, because that's the Zona. That is the woman who's straight, who's referred to in the Torah. The Azona, Kohanim Hu Demefakti, Yisrael Lo Mefakti. We're machmir on Zona for Kohanim, but not for regular Jewish males.
I assume it's possible that you wouldn't know she's an islandess until you get married and she doesn't have children. So would you find out later she's an islandess? Would you have to get rid of her?
It's a mega
house,
So possibly, but he might just either have to get rid of her or marry another wife who can't.
Well, Senator Cohen, you're saying.
Oh, Cohen. According to Rabbi Yehuda, yeah. According to Chachamim, no. I mean, that's machlokas in our Mishnah. Mishum hachik tani Cohen, and for that reason, because we were addressing the Seifa specifically to a Cohen, the Reisha of the Mishnah wrote about a Cohen, but in a Chanami, a regular Jewish male cannot marry an islandess. Amar Rav Huna, my time of the Rabbi Yehuda. What is Rav Yehuda's reason? So again, Rabbi Yehuda said that even though he already has a wife and children, he's not allowed to marry an islandess because she is a zona. So what is Rabbi Yehuda's reasoning? Dichsiv, Rabbi Feibel, you can help me with the punctuation here. Ichlu, oh wait, I got it. Achlu v'lo yispeu. They ate, but they were not satisfied. Hiznu v'lo yifrodzu. They had bia, but they did not procreate. So what's the limud here? Kol bia she'ein. No. Kol bia she'ein ba pirza. Eina ela be'ilas snus. Any bia that cannot possibly lead to new children, that's considered a bia snus. So that's Rabbi Yehuda's reasoning. Tanya. Rabbi Eliezer Omer. Now, a lot of the rest of the Amud, until the Mishnah, is going to be dealing with the following opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. Kohen lo yisa es aktana. A Kohen is not allowed to marry a ktana. That's a girl younger than 12. Amarle Rav Chisda l'Rabba. Rav Chisda says to Rabba, Pok ayin ba. Go and look into this teaching of Rabbi Eliezer. Why? Because later on tonight, Rav Huna is going to ask you to explain Rabbi Eliezer's shita. Nafak ayin ba. So Rabbah went out and he looked into it and he said the following: Rabbi Eliezer, Savalak Rabbi Meir, Savalak Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Eliezer holds in one way like Rabbi Meir and in another way like Rabbi Yehuda. What are those views? Savalak Rabbi Meir, the Chayish L'miyuta. So he holds like Rabbi Meir, who's choshesh for the fact that, like Alan said, maybe she'll be an islandess, and you don't know. He's choshesh for that miyut. The Sabra law to Rabbi Yehuda Damar island is zona, and he holds like Rabbi Yehuda, who says, as we saw, that an islandess, that's the zona referred to in the Torah. Zona havya. Now, the Gemara is going to ask, is it true that Rabbi Eliezer, in this view that a Kohen is not allowed to marry a Ketana, you need a Gemara? Here. Is it true that Rabbi Eliezer holds like Rabbi Yehuda, like Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda? First, he's going to tackle the issue with Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir misarala v'atanya katan uketana lo choltzin v'lo miyadnu. Divrei Rabbi Meir. According to Rabbi Meir, a katan and a ketana do not do chalitza and they do not do yibum. Amru lo Rabbi Meir yafe amarta she'in choltzin. Rabbi Meir, you're saying good. Said that a katan and a ketana don't do chalitza. Why? Ish ksiv b'parsha. The parsha says ish umakshina isha leish, and we connect a grown woman to a grown man, and therefore they don't do chalitza. Elamai time ein miyadmin. But you, Rabbi Meir, why do you say that they don't do yibum? Amarle katan shema yimtza saris, ketana shema timtza islandis. Says because a katan, a Jewish male, may turn out to be sterile, and a ketana may also similarly be unable to have children. V'nimtzu pogin be'erva. And it turns out that when they get together, they will be having forbidden relations. Vitanya, and then we have a further brisa. Ketana misyavemes ve'enochol. That's divrei Rabbi Eliezer. So we see in a separate brisa that Rabbi Eliezer holds that a ketana can do yibum, unlike Rabbi Meir. So we see, not like Rabbah says, that Rabbi Eliezer cannot hold like Rabbi Meir because he explicitly disagrees with him on this issue. And now Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda misabrala. does Rabbi Eliezer really hold like Rabbi Yehuda V'Atanya? Zona kishma. What's a zona? A zona, the word zona means somebody who strays. So the Tanakam, Diva Rabbi Eliezer. So Rabbi Eliezer is a very different definition right off the bat from Rabbi Yehuda. Remember, Rabbi Yehuda said that the definition of a zona is islands. And Rabbi Eliezer holds that a zona is something a little bit more what we would traditionally think of as a zona.
But the Mishnah says.
It's a machlokes in the Mishnah.
Oh.
It's a machlokes in the Mishnah. Rabbi Eliezer holds not like Rabbi Yehuda. So we see that Rabbi Eliezer holds not like Rabbi Yehuda. So how can it be? Now, the Gemara now is going to give a whole bunch of other people's opinions on what a zona is. Rabbi Kiva Omer zona zu mufkeres. Rabbi Kiva holds that a zona is somebody who is open to all. Rabbi Masya ben Charash Omer afilu halach ba'al lashkosa. Rabbi Masya ben Charash says, even a husband taking his own wife to the Beis Hamikdash to drink the Mesota, uba aleha baderech, and they have relations while they're on the way to the Beis Hamikdash, asa a zona. He makes his own wife a zona because she was usher to him. Rabbi Yehuda Omer zona zu islandess, as we've seen. V'chachamim omrim ein zona elagiros u'mishucheres v'shenivela be'ilas zunos, like we saw in the Mishnah. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, this is corrected by the Masorah Shas Rabbi Elazar, because otherwise we have Rabbi Eliezer contradicting himself. Panui haba ala penuya shelo shem ishus asa zona. A single man who has relations with a single woman, not for the purpose of marriage, that gives her the status of a zona. Ella, so now, up until this point, all we've done is satisfied the fact that Rabba's explanation of Rabbi Eliezer is completely 100% not correct, because Rabba said that Rabbi Eliezer holds like Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda, and we just proved that he holds like neither. So what's going on? Rabbi Eliezer was dealing not with a Kohen Hedyot, but with a Kohen Gadol. Now, the Gemara is jumping all over this. How can that be? Le'emas kanila. But when did he acquire her? L'chi gadla be'ulahi. That because when he does marry her finally, fully, he's already at bia with her. So that means the Kohen Gadol is marrying a be'ula, even though it's his own be'ula. Rashi says it's like his own mefata, his own anus, that he's not allowed to marry. So therefore, so Amar Rava, Machli Lev, Rava says, what, loosely translated, what are you talking about? Her father, meaning the father of a katana, is 100% allowed to be Makadesh's daughter, and it's a complete immediate kinyan. So she'd be fully married. And if a katana were to offer herself in Kedushin, is that valid?
No.
No. Why?
She's not a bardas.
She doesn't have das. So asks the Gemara, Rabbi Eliezer, Hebrew lo Rabbanan? You think it's only Rabbi Eliezer that would hold that way and not the Rabbanan? Of course not. Rava says, so that shita does not work at all. Ella Amar Rava, Le'olam b'kohen hedyo. Rava returns us to our original thinking and says, really, Rabbi Eliezer is dealing with a Kohen Hedyot and not a Kohen Gadol. And we're concerned that if he marries a katana, that she, because as Rashi says, she literally has no idea what's going on because she's so young, maybe she'll be seduced by somebody else, and then she'll be usher to the Kohen. Ihachi asks the Gemara, Yisrael Nami. Well, why are we only worried about that with a Kohen? A Yisrael too should also not be allowed to marry a katana. Answers the Gemara, Petuye katana onesu. That a katana who is seduced by a man to whom she is not married or engaged, that's considered a case of ones. The ones by Yisrael mishra shari, and an ones by Yisrael doesn't mean a Jew. It means a non-Kohen. That's 100% allowed. So we're not so worried about that case. Allowed to keep her. Yes. Sorry. Yes. Thank you. He's allowed to keep her. So we're only worried about that by a Kohen. Okay. Rav Papa Amar. Rav Papa gives a different approach. He says we're talking about the Kohen Gadol. The Haitana Hu Detanya, in keeping with the following brisa, Basula. So what's a Basula? Yachol Katana. I might think that a Basula refers to a Katana, Talmud Lomar Isha. Well, not a Katana, it's an Isha. However, Isha, Yachol Bogeres. But if it's a woman, I might think that he's allowed to marry a Bogeres, which we already said a couple dapim ago. Kohen Gadol is not allowed to marry a Bogeres. Talmud Lomar Basula. So then we go back to our original teaching of a basula. So what's the math on this? Says the Gemara the following. Okay, son, how can you have your way? How can you have your cake and eat it too with all this language? Yatsasami klal katnus. She has to leave the status of a katana. Uluchlal bagrus lo basa, but she does not yet get to the status of bagrus. That's about a 6-month window. Narus, correct. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Amar, Haitana Hudatanya Besula. In Besula, sorry. Hang on. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Amar, Haitana Hudatanya Besula, and in Besula Elanara, V'cheinu Omer v'Hanara Tovas Marem Meod Besula. That refers to Rivka. Very good, Doctor. Rabbi Elazar Omer, Pano Yabala Pano.
Why does it refer to Rivka?
Because that's what the pasuk says.
When we met her.
The pasuk refers to Rivka.
In the water,
Now we're going to return. Rabbi, we got a long way to go, fellas. Rabbi Elazar says. Now we said earlier that Rabbi Elazar, not Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Elazar said that if a panui haba ala panuya shalola shebisus asa zona, said that a single man who has relations with a single woman, that gives her the status of a zona. Rav Amram mein halacha Rabbi Elazar. Rav Amram says that the halach is not like Rabbi Elazar. So if a single woman were to have bia with somebody and she's not, in Rabbi Akiva's language, mufkeres lakol, that does not give her a status of a zona. Okay, we are in the Mishnah, first middle line on Samech Aleph Amud Beis. By the way, the goal is to get to just around the corner to the very top of Samech Gimel Amud Aleph. Okay, here we go. A Pruer Vusugya, very interesting stuff. And we're going to bump into a couple of very, very famous Gemaras. One, very germane to Sfiras HaOmer. Lo Yavat Aladam Epir Yevarivya, Elim Ken Yesh Lo Banim. That a person has to continue to try to have children unless he already has kids. Beis Shammai Omrim, when are you yotzei the mitzvah of Pruervu? Beis Shammai says, Shnei Zacharim, you need to have 2 sons. Beis Hillel Omrim, Zachar Unakeva. This, of course, is how we paskin. 1 son and 1 daughter. Shnei Amar, Zachar Unakeva Bira'ah. Says the Gemara. Ha yesh lo banim mipir yevarivya batil meisha lo batil. Just because you've already had children doesn't mean you're allowed to remain single. Messiah the Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel, and this supports the opinion of Rav Nachman in the name of Shmuel de Amar, who said the following: even though a person has many children, you're not allowed to remain single. Shnei Amar, the pasuk says, Lo tov heyos ha'adam levado. It's not good for man to be alone. V'ika de amrei, and there are those who to give a version of this teaching as follows: Hayesh lo banim batum apir yevarivya. That not only if a person already has children is he absolved from the requirement to have more, he also doesn't have to remarry. He's allowed to stay single. So now name it Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel. Well, maybe that is an exact 100% contradiction and kasha against Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel, who said that you have to have a wife. Lo, says the Gemara, nope, that's not what it means. Let's explain all of this. Ein lo banim, if the guy does not have children, no se isha bas banim. He has to marry a woman who is capable of having children. However, yesh lo banim, but if he already has children, no se isha delav bas banim. He is allowed to marry a woman who is, let's say, maybe an islandess, or she's too old to have children. That is completely mutter. So what's the nafkamina? Nafkamina limkor sefer Torah b'shvil banim. That if one has to sell a Sefer Torah in order to get married and have children, he's only allowed to do so if that relationship will net out with children. Hopefully. Okay. Beis Shammai Omrim Shnei Zacharim. Second to last line on the page. Now, Beis Shammai's opinion was that you're yotzei with the mitzvah of Piri Verivia if you have 2 sons. My Tamayim de Beis Shammai. What is the reasoning? Yalfinan mi Moshe. We learn from Moshe Rabbeinu Dichsiv, b'nei Moshe Gershom ve'Eliezer. Now we know that Moshe separated from Mrs. Rabbeinu. So Beis Shammai's teaching is Moshe had 2 kids, separated from his wife. He's done. The Gemara will explain that it wasn't so simple. Beis Hillel Yalfina mi Briasa Shalom. And Beis Hillel.
No, but then is looked about Adam Levado. We just said it.
So HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we're going to get to this. HaKadosh Baruch Hu paskin by Moshe that he could not be married, and we'll see why. It's an issue of
That's
nevuah.
another.
It's an issue of nevuah.
Shlichus believes that.
That's right. Well, it's a nevuah issue. It's not the shlichus issue. It's nevuah. We'll see. We'll see. The Gemara takes care of us. What's briyasa shalom? Adam and Chava, man and woman. Because without man and woman, what can't you have? Pop quiz, biology majors, no children. You need both. Okay. Ubeis Shammai, Lil Femi briyasa shalom. Now, why doesn't Beis Shammai learn from briyasa shalom? Because Beis Shammai says, "Ein danin efshar," top of Samach Beis, because we don't learn the possible misha efshar from the impossible, meaning it was impossible to create the world without man and woman. Otherwise, there would be no children. But you can have a bunch of sons. There will always be people with daughters. So Beis Shammai says, "Don't worry, just have sons and you'll be fine."
I was gonna say it, but obviously Moshe Rabbeinu is a strange place. We know Moshe is a product of Amma Mary's aunt, also from the Torah. So obviously, those days they did things which weren't first or not in Torah. So
True.
Because he stopped from moved away from having sons, his whole being himself was a matter of nowadays.
Moshe had a specific psak from HaKadosh Baruch Hu that he should not.
The fact you're saying he had a son and a daughter, we say, oh, because of that, he had a son and daughter, that we can learn that we only need two sons.
Two sons, yeah.
We can learn that we need to have two sons. It's kind of strange.
I would suggest still speaking to LOR for making the moves.
Ayu Beis Hillel, top line, Samach Beis Amud Aleph, Nami Lilfu mi Moshe. Now, why didn't Beis Hillel also learn from Moshe? Amri Lecha, Moshe Midaitehu de'Avid. Moshe is a specific case, and he had his own reason. Titania, Shlosha, it's famous Gemara. Shlosha Dorim Asa Moshe Midaito V'Iskim Midaito L'Das Makom. Moshe Rabbeinu did three specific things on his own, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu agreed with his psak. Number one, Pirish Mina Isha, he separated from Sipora. V'Shiber Aluchos, he smashed the tablets. V'Hostiv Yom Echad, and he added one day to the days of preparation and Hagbala before Shavuos. How many days of Hagbala? How many did HaKadosh Baruch Hu paskin?
2.
Correct. We'll see why. Pirish Mina Isha, my Darash. Now, why did Moshe separate from Tzipora? Amar. Uma Yisrael Shelo Dibra Imam Shechina Ela Lefi Shah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu only spoke to Klal Yisrael once as a nation by Matan Torah. V'kav Lahem Zman and the Torah. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu required Klal Yisrael to prepare for Matan Torah. How? Amar Torah Al Tikshu Elisha. You have to stay away from your wives to prepare for Matan Torah. Ani, however, says Moshe Rabbeinu, I am uniquely required to be available to speak with HaKadosh Baruch Hu at any hour, and I don't have a set calendar for when it's going to happen. How much more so do I need to be separated from my wife? And HaKadosh Baruch Hu agreed with this psak. After Matan Torah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to Moshe, tell all of Klal Yisrael, go back to your tents. Tents are wives. V'ata po amod imadi. You have to stay here with me. Dafka, you're not allowed to go back to your wife. Okay. Shiber esaluchos, my darash. Now, what is with Moshe giving himself permission to smash the luchos? Amar. Uma pesach shu echad mishesh miyosu shlosh esrei mitzvos amar Torah. Kol ben echar lo yochabo. By the Korban Pesach, which is one out of 613, where we say that a non-Jew and somebody who's a sinner is not allowed to eat it. HaTorah kula. What about kol Torah kula? V'Yisrael mumarim alachas kama v'kama. Of course, I couldn't give them access to that. I had to break the luchos. V'Hiskima daito l'daito l'dasa mako. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu agreed with Moshe's psak by the luchos. Tichsiv asher shibarta. The Amaresh Lakish Amalei HaKadosh Baruch Hu l'Moshe. Yishar kochacha sheshibarta. Shkoyach. You did good by breaking the luchos. Now the third case. Hostif yom echad midaita. Moshe Rabbeinu added a third day to what we now know as the Shloshes Yemei Hagbala, before Matan Torah. My Darash, how did Moshe come to this? Tichsiv the following. V'kidashtem hayom machar. You have to become sanctified today and tomorrow. Hayom kemachar. So Moshe Rabbeinu says, look, the today must match the tomorrow. Ma machar leilo imo, just like tomorrow has its preceding evening accompanying it, because we hold vayera vayivoker, and the day really starts at night. Af hayom leilo imo. It must be that the first full day also has to have its night. This conversation with HaKadosh Baruch Hu took place on Wednesday, which means that Tuesday night was already in the past. So Moshe says, look, what's Hayom Machar? Hayom is Thursday, Machar is Friday, Matan Torah was Shabbos.
See, they should learn from this extra day that the Egel, if they would wait extra day, from what he just did, waited a year before the Torah. After the Egel, they should wait one more day because that's the system of worship.
I don't think they got.
Matan Torah was
Because he
different.
counted the day after. He started to count the 40 days
I
after.
think I have to-
Just similar to this.
And the night that goes for today, meaning the night accompanying Wednesday, that already passed. Shema Mina, Trei Yome, Levar Me Ha'idna. We learn from this that that Moshe Rabbeinu Paskin 2 days, 2 full days, except for today, meaning in addition to today. V'yiskim adaito l'das hamakom, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu agreed. The lo shar yeshchina ad Shabbasa, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't rest his Shechina on Har Sinai until Shabbos. We now return to the issue of when are you Yotzei, the mitzvah of Pru Urvu. Tanya, Rabbi Nassan Omer. So according to Rabbi Nassan, we have a different version of Beis Shammai's psak. Beis Shammai Omrim, Shnei Zecharim, Ushnei Nekevos. Not 2 sons, you need 2 sons and 2 daughters. Beis Hillel Omrim, Zachar Unakeva. And Beis Hillel says, again, this is within the sheet of Rabbi Nassan, a male and a female. Amar Rabbi Huna, my time to Rabbi Nassan, Beis Shammai. Rabbi Huna says, what is the reasoning of Rabbi Nassan within the opinion of Beis Shammai? Dichsiv, Vatosev Laledes, Es Achiv, Es Hevel. We darshan the S's. Es Achiv, Es Hevel. Hevel va'achoso, Kayin va'achoso. We darshan that to mean that it wasn't just boys who were born, but a boy and a girl. Uksiv, Kishasli Elohim, Zera Acher. That Chava acknowledges the birth of Shes. And the implication is here that after Cain killed Hevel, she needed to replace him so that she always had 4, 2 boys and 2 girls. Rabbanan, they don't agree with this. They're saying, no, that's not what that statement of Chava means. She was just thanking HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Thank you for giving me a son. Not that I had to fill the count back up to 4. Tanya Idach, another version of this machlokes. Rabbi Nassim, Rabbi Shammai Omrim Zachar Unakeva. We say the Beis Shammai says that it's a male and female. Ubeis Hillel Omrim O Zachar O Nekeva. Beis Hillel says one or the other. All you need to have is 1 kid. Amarava. So now the kasha is really on Beis Hillel within the sheet of Rabbi Nassim. Amarava, my time with Rabbi Nassim, I'll the Beis Hillel. What is the reasoning? Shnei Lo Sohu Bira Lasheves Yitzara. That the world was created not to remain empty, but to remain filled with people. And when you have 1 kid, you've done your part. You've contributed to the population of the world. Itmar. Time check. Itmar. What happens if a ger, before he converted, already had children, then is gayer, and then post childbearing, he is megayer. First wide line. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Kayem Pirya Verivya. According to Rabbi Yochanan, he is Yotzei Pruervu. Why?
He converts his children.
Because he had kids.
Yeah.
But the
So
Gemara-
how do you convert the children? You have
Oh,
to
that
do-
no, it's not even about converting the children. It's
No.
about do we count these as children within the mitzvah of Pruervu or not? Yes or no? Rabbi Yochanan says yes.
So then you mean it.
The Gemara's gonna-
about to the Golan too. That's it.
Oh, we're gonna get this. That's the sugya.
So guy,
We're gonna get into this sugya right now.
the guy appears.
It's a sugya of yichos. It's a sugya of our Yotzei Pruervu.
Children, the guy.
Okay. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Kayim Piri Verivya. Reish Lakish Amar Lo Kayim Piri Verivya. Reish Lakish says you are not Yotzei. Now what? Now let's get into these opinions. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Kayim Piri Verivya to Hahavale, because we can see that he has children. Done. Reish Lakish Amar Lo Kayim Piri Verivya. Why not? Gershin is Gayer Kekatan Shenola Dami, because when a ger becomes a Jew, they are starting from 0. Nothing before counts. And Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish in this machlokas over the validity of children prior to gerus, in terms of being mekayim the mitzvah of pruervu, they are consistent in their opinions as they are in a separate machlokas to idmar. What if somebody has children when he was still a non-Jew, and then he converts. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Ein Lo Bechor L'Nachala. Rabbi Yochanan said that if he has children B'Kedusha as a Jew, the Bechor, the male oldest child that is born to him after Gerus, does not get Pishnayim. He's not considered a Bechor for Nachala purposes. Tehahava Le Reshis Ono, because he already has biological children from his prior life.
So who's gonna be Bechel after he converts? The first boy after he converts is gonna be the Bechel?
No, right.
No, Dafka
No
not.
Bechel, nothing?
Nope, not for Nachala, no. Now for his Jewish wife, maybe it's Petarecha, maybe it's
Oh.
he might have a picking up then.
Through her.
That's a totally different discussion, totally different set of halachas. For Reish Lakish, Amar Yesh Lo Bechor L'Nachala. And Reish Lakish says 100% the first male child born after his gerus is considered a Jew, and therefore his Bechor, and therefore he gets Pishnai. Why? Because Gershon is Gaira Kakatan Shinoladami, because he starts over. Utzricha. Now, why do I need both of these machlokos between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish? They seem to prove the exact same point. Says the Gemara 6 lines down in the wide lines of Utzricha. And I need them both. Yashmin and Bahi Kamaisa, if I only have the machlokas of Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. In the first case of whether or not you're Yotzei Pru or Vu, the Hahika Amar Rabbi Yochanan. And maybe in that case, Rabbi Yochanan says that you are Yotzei, Mishum Demei Karanami B'nei Piri B'Riv Ninhu. Because by the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nei Noach, or sorry, originally the first Pru or Vu was not given to the Jews, it was Pru or Vu Meluas Haaretz. It was given to humanity. So because humanity had to have children, they were already chayav in that mitzvah. But when it comes to inheritance, the la b'nei nachala ninu, because goyim have no din of nachala, maybe Rabbi Yochanan would agree to Reish Lakish, and therefore the first male child born post gerus, he gets pishnayim, he's considered a bechor. And maybe if I only had the machlokas by nachala, maybe Reish Lakish says that it's only there that we count the first male child post gerus as a real Jewish bechor, and therefore he gets pishnayim. But maybe in the case of being the kind of the mitzvah of Pru or Vu, Rabbi Yochanan. Maybe he might agree to Rabbi Yochanan because we see the plain biological fact is he has children. So maybe it's only a din in nachla. So therefore it's tzricha. So therefore we need both cases. Now, Rabbi Yochanan, the Reish Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan asks the following of Reish Lakish. How can you say that there's no din of yichus and we don't hold of a halachic connection between a non-Jew and his non-Jewish father? Ba'esahi, shalach berodach baladan ben baladan melech Bavel. So we see that in, I guess this is Malachim Beis, we see that a non-Jew is specifically listed as the son of his father. Amar lei, v'yosan ovdei kochavim, islahu chayis, nisgayiru leislahu chayis. That when it's goyim, children of goyim, that chain counts for something. The chain is broken when one of them goes through gerus. Amarav. Gemara is going to give a couple examples, and we'll sort of get to a conclusion on this issue. Amarav, Hakom modin be'eved she'en lo chayis. Everybody agrees that an Eved Kanani has no yichus whatsoever. Dichsiv shivu lachem po im hachamor am hadome lachamor. When Avraham Avinu says to Eliezer, domestic Eliezer, you wait here with the donkeys, what he's saying is you're basically considered a donkey, and by donkeys there's no yichus whatsoever.
You couldn't see the cloud.
Meisivei. Now the Gemara is going to ask a question on this. Uletziva chamisha sarbanim ve'esrim avadim. Tziva, who was an Eved of Yonasan ben Shaul HaMelech, we see that we count this non-Jewish person's children as his children. Amar Rav Bar Yaakov, Kipar ben Bakar, which is kind of a not nice thing. This is, look, it's no different than acknowledging Par ben Bakar. It is biologically, physically a child, but we don't count that as yichus. Ihachi, hachanami. Well, then what about this case of Birodach Baladan? That's also, why don't we say that's Par ben Bakar there? Shani Hasam diyachsinu b'shmayu. Because there we actually have their names. It's, Howard, son of Steve, that kind of, we've acknowledged who they are by their familial relationship, and not just generally that one had children. Uvishma de abuhom. and with the name of their father. But here, by this case of Tziva, they were that level of yichus was not listed. Or another way to learn this proof that by goyim within their status of goyim there is some level of yichus. Yachsinu beduchta achrisi ba'avunu ba'aba de'avun. I'll give you another example of a place where people are mentioned by themselves and the names of their fathers and their fathers' fathers. Dichsi vayishalchem hamelech Asa el ben Hadad ben Tavrimon ben Chazayon melech Aram hayoshev b'Damasek lemor. So we see this case of all these people specifically listed themselves and the name of their fathers. So when they are goyim and they stay goyim, that yichus counts for something. But as soon as they're megayer, goodbye yichus. Itmar hayu lo banim umesu. Now, what happens if somebody Rahman al-Islan has children and those children pass away? Is a person still yotzei the mitzvah pru'ervu? Rav Huna Amar Kayim Piri V'Rivya. Rav Huna says that yes, he is yotzei. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Lo Kayim. Rabbi Yochanan says, and we pass in this way, you are not yotzei Piri V'Rivya, and you have to keep
If
trying.
he's after mature, in an age that he can't keep up with that book.
Talk to your local Orthodox rabbi. Rav Huna Amar Kayim Mishum de Rav Asi. Now, why does Rav Huna say that you're yotzei? Because of Rav Asi. The Amar Rav Asi Ein ben David ba ad sheyichlu kol neshamos shebaguf. Because Rav Asi says that the Mashiach will not come until all the neshamos in guf, which I think refers to a heavenly storehouse of neshamos. I don't think it refers to specifically a human body, but basically, Shenamar ki ruach milafana yato. Basically, the Art Scroll explains it.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's worth. I saw that. That's worth a read. But essentially, Rav Huna says, as soon as you do your part to give life to a neshama, you're done. And if with the mitzvah period of Rebbe, and if that child doesn't make it, you've at least accomplished creating a neshama, and therefore you're yotzei. For Rabbi Yochanan Amar Lo Kayim Piri V'Rivya. Why? Because Lasheves Yitzara Ba'inan. Because we have a pasuk that says that the world was created to be inhabited, and Rahman al-Islan, the children are no longer the haleka, and because they're not here, you're not yotzi. Now, Meisivei to the top of Samach Beis Amud Beis, B'nei Banim Harehin Kibanim. This is a kasha on Rav Huna. We say that grandchildren can help fulfill the mitzvah of children. Rashi explains, top Rashi, Kasal Kedaitach. Shemeis hazachar o anekeva. Let's say a person has a son or a daughter, v'hayalo ben, and that son or daughter has a child. Sheyitztaref im achos aviv o im ache imo. That this grandchild is then mitztaref to his aunt or his uncle. Aviha of chayav o b'piri v'rivya. That the grandfather is still chayav in piri v'rivya. Excuse me, ain't up. I thought that didn't make sense. The grandfather's he's no longer chayav. V'taima shahaya lo lemeis ben, because his son had a child. However, halav hachi. But if the child doesn't have a child, but if his child does not give him a grandchild, lo kayim. Why not? The shevas ba'inan bekasha Rav Huna. This is the kasha of Rav Huna. So you say that if the guy has a child, but that child doesn't have a child himself, he's not yotzei, because the whole purpose of having children is so that they can have children. So how can Rav Huna say that if your child passes away, Rahman al-Islan, that you're still yotzei?
Yeah, but it's also interesting. The person only has one girl. He's not Yotze. Now it's his grandchildren. He's Yotze.
But what the point of the Gemara here is that if Reuven has a son and that son has a daughter who survives, the grandfather's yotzei, peri v'rivik, zachar unakeva. And that's why we say banim, b'nei banim kibanim, because they help fill in the gap if one is naturally not able to have his own. Okay, Kitanya answers the Gemara for Rav Huna, hahila hashlim. That's only to be mashlim. What does to be mashlim mean? Rashi again, fourth wide line. What if the older person only has one child? V'nasa haben isha. The child got married. V'holid bas pater azaken. So this Indian of hashlama is completing his mitzvah by 2 generations of children. Meisive, and with this, we're gonna sort of get rid of Rav Huna's opinion. B'nei banim hareid kamanim. However, Meis echad mehem, one if one dies, oshanim tzaris, or he becomes or is found to be sterile, lo kayim peri v'rivya, tiyuvta de Rav Huna tiyuvta. So we see a brisa that specifically negates Rav Huna's opinion, and we do not hold that way. Now, b'nei banim harehim kivanim, we said just now that grandchildren can help fill in the gap and allow one to be yotze the mitzvah peri v'rivya. Savar Abaye l'memar v'ra libra. So Abaye thought to say that a grandson can fill in for a son. Ubarta lebarta, and a daughter can fill in for and a granddaughter can fill in for a daughter. The kol shekain bra lebarsa, and all the more so can a son and a grandson fill in for a daughter, again, to make whole this zachar unakeva of a brasa lebra lo. Abaye thought to say that maybe there was some, I believe the ArtScrolls phrase is a special quality to having a grandson over a granddaughter. He does not explain what that special quality is. Amarle Rava says, no, don't think that way. Lashevis Yitzar Abaye. The Ha'ika says the point is to populate the world. And a granddaughter certainly can fill in the gap and certainly has as much relevance and effectiveness as a grandson. Now, in any event, Tekuli Alamias, Trei Mechad Lo. In any event, if you have two grandchildren from one child, let's say somebody had two children, one of those children, Rahman al passes away without children, we know that you're not Yotze. Asks the Gemara below, is that the case? Because the Chachamim said to Rav Sheshes, who apparently had a daughter but no sons, go get married and have sons. My daughter's sons, they're my children and I'm Yotze. So we see that two children from one child allows you to be Yotze. Answers the Gemara. You can't learn from the case of Rav Sheshes. Why not? Because Rav Sheshes was really deferring them from what was really going on. The Rav Sheshes the Rav Huna, because Rav Sheshes was rendered sterile, because Rav Huna used to give shiurim that were so long that the Talmidim would never leave in the middle. They were not able to relieve themselves, and by essentially holding in and not going to urinate, it rendered them sterile. Amarle Rabba, the Rava Bar Mari. Rabba says to Rava Bar Mari, from where do we learn that grandchildren can help fill in the gap and are like children? Maybe we can learn it from Lavan, who says to Yaakov, your daughters are my daughters and your sons are my sons. But he also said that your sheep are my sheep. And was that true? No, they belong to Yaakov Avinu. Hachanami. Is that so? That Lavan can claim that the sheep were his too? Clearly not. Ella, the kanisa minai, just like the only reason you have these sheep is because of me. Hachanami the kanisa minai. So too, all these children are because I gave you my daughters as wives. So where do we learn it from? Elamehacha. Ve'achar b'chetzron el bas machir avi gelad b'tela lo es seguv uksiv mini machir yardu mechokakim uksiv Yehuda mechokaki. Now, from all of this, we learn, I'll just explain it outside, that the children of a daughter count as b'nei banim. So that's how we learn that b'nei banim harehin kibanim. Masnisin dalav k'Rabbi Yeshua. Now, it turns out that our Mishnah is not like Rabbi Yeshua. I know. So it's a relationship where the mechokake of Yehuda come through a daughter, not through a son, proving that grandchildren through a daughter count as b'nei banim, and certainly grandchildren through a son. That's that limud. The ArtScroll explains it fully. I don't know who's who, but Shachris is in 5 minutes. So let's just get through as much as we can. Detanya, Rabbi Yeshua Omer, Nasa Adam Isha b'yalduso, Yisa Isha bizaknuso. That if somebody got married when he was young, he should also marry somebody in his old age. And if he has children in his young age, he should also have children in his old age. Shneimar, Baboker Zara Zarecha, in the morning, sow your seed, but in the evening, don't rest. You never know which ones are going to turn out to be the good and the wholesome ones. And whether both the ones that are younger and the ones that are older will be equally good. Rabbi Akiva Omer, That's not referring to children. That refers to Limud Torah. Lamad Torah b'yalduso, Yilmad Torah b'ziknuso. That if you learn when you're young, you'll learn when you're old. Hayilo tamidim b'yalduso, yilo tamidim b'ziknuso. If you have tamidim when you're young, you'll have tamidim when you're old. Shneimar, baboker zera es zarecha. Amru. Shneim asar elav zudim tamidim hayulo Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva had 12,000 students, migabas ad Antipras, from this city called Gabas, until Antipras. V'chulan mesu b'perak echad. They all died in one time period. Mipnei shelo nagu kovad zeh lazeh. They did not honor one another properly. V'haya ha'olam shamein. The world was desolate of Torah. Ad Shabbat, Rabbi Akiva, Eitzel Rabboseinu Shebedaro, until Rabbi Akiva came to the rabbis of the south, Ushana Lahem, and he taught them Torah. Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Huda, Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Elazar ben Shemua, the Heim Ha'amidu Torah, Osa Shah, and they brought Torah back to life at that time. Tana, and we learn Kula Mesu Pesach Be'aratzeres. They all died between Pesach and Shavuos. Amar Rav Chama bar Abba B'Item Rav Chia bar Abin, Kulan Mesu Misa Ra'a. They all died a terrible, difficult death. Maihi, Amar of Nachman, Askara, which I believe is translated as diphtheria. By the way, Rabbi Liebtag mentioned this, but there's a fascinating mimer from Rav Shri Ragon that they did not die from a disease. They died from a shmad around the time of Bar Kochba, and they were considered part of that group. And then it wasn't that they died of a disease, that they were murdered and killed in that war. Amar of Matana, Halacha Rabbi Yeshua. When Matana says that halacha is like Rabbi Yeshua, and again, what was it that Rabbi Yeshua said? Rabbi Yeshua holds that
More children.
you should have more children and marry again even when you're old. Amar Rabbi Tanchum Amar Rabbi Chanilai, Kol Adam Shein Lo Isha Shori Below Simcha Below Bracha Below Tova. That anybody who is not married, a man who's not married, has no happiness, no blessing, no goodness. Below Simcha Dichsiv V'Samachta Beisecha. Because, and we know that commonly Beisecha, your house, refers to one's wife. Below bracha, how do we know that you don't have bracha? Dichsiv lahaniach bracha el beisacha, to place bracha in your house. Below tova, dichsiv lo tova yosa adam levado. It's not good for a person to be alone. The Ma'arava Amri below Torah below choma below. Then in Eretz Yisrael they said that without a wife you don't have Torah and you don't have a wall around you. Below Torah dichsiv ha'emein ez rashi bi v'soshia nidchem imeni. That if I don't have my Ezer with me, my Torah will leave me. Below choma. And what does this mean without a wall? Dichsiv, nekeva to sovev gever. A woman surrounds and protects her husband. Rav Abba Amar below shalom. Says also without shalom, dichsiv, v'yadata ki shalom ohalecha ufakadata navecha below sechata. That your wife will bring you peace and you will not sin. Amar Rabbi Shua ben Levi kol yodeh beishto shehi yirash shamayim ve'ino pokta nikra chote. That anybody who is aware that his wife is a Yiras Shamayim and may not, in her modesty, express desire for her husband, if he is not with her physically, he's considered a sinner. Shenamar v'yadataki shalom alecha. Ve'amar Rabbi Shua ben Levi chayara adam lifkodas ishto b'shashu yotzei laderech. That when a person's about to go on a trip, he has to be with his wife. Shenamar v'yadataki shalom alecha. Hamehacha nafka, asks the Gemara. Do we learn it from there? No, mehasam nafki. We learn it from a different pasuk. The elishech teshukasech, that a woman will desire her husband. Melamed shahaisha mishtokekes al bala b'shashu yotzei laderech. That a woman will desire her husband at a time that he goes out on the road. Amar Rav Yosef lo nitzracha elo samach labesta. That only comes to teach that he should be with his wife when it's close to the time that she has her period. Vikama. What does that mean? Samuch, Amarava, Ona. That's either the day that she would normally expect her period or the night that she would normally expect her period. This is a massive area of complicated halacha. Ask your LOR. V'hani mili the davar rishus. And that when should he go ahead and make sure when he's hitting the road that he should be with his wife? That's only if he's going for a dvar rishus. Aval dvar mitzvah mitridi. But if he's going for a dvar mitzvah, Rashi gives two explanations of what this. Either he'll be tarud with the mitzvah, or he'll be tarud with being with his wife, and he won't have a chance to do the mitzvah. Okay, why do we stop here? Have a nice day.